On this episode of Beyond the Stats, the MLB schedule has been released. A big shakeup is coming in college sports. But first, the massive contract of Patrick Mahomes.
This is Beyond the Stats with Zach and Tanner.
So Tanner, starting off right away, talking about the insanely large Patrick Mahomes contract that came out, that was announced earlier this week. 10 years up to $503 million is low with like incentives, gets to 503, some guarantees, 477 with guaranteed mechanisms, and then 140 guaranteed automatically if he gets injured, and a few other things like his 2023 contract is guaranteed in 2021. His 2024 contract is guaranteed in 2023. Things like that. Just some weird stuff going on, Tanner. I mean, first off, initial reactions to this insane contract.
Well, Zach, I've got to say, in terms of football, there's no other quarterback that I would say deserves a deal like this than Patrick Mahomes. This is still, remember, this dude is only 24 years old. That's only 1 or 2 years older than me. And he's by far, most people would put him as the best quarterback in the NFL right now. And the stuff that he has done already, not just for the Chiefs, but for football in general, is just unlike anything other. I mean, as you said, this contract goes till 2031, which feels like light years away. But, when you first see it, you just think, again, if there's any other, not just football player, honestly, athlete in sports right now that deserves a deal like this, it's Patrick Mahomes. And I am super happy for him. I think the Chiefs made a great move. He wants to start a legacy. The Chiefs want to. And I will say this, if there is one guy that you want to get behind, it's Patrick Mahomes.
Well, thinking about it, it's the biggest contract in sports history in a couple of ways. In sheer number of amount of money that he could get, $503 million. Like no one has signed a contract for $500 million. Like that's just ridiculous. $500 million. Like so much. And then on top of that, you have to look at what's going on with, the way that it's like 10 years, but he's finishing the last 2 years of this contract, and then that 10-year contract kicks in, and then the Chiefs were smart, and they backloaded the contract. So like all of the big like $50 million a year numbers come at the back end. So like starting like year 7, and then so the first 6 years he's still on a pretty solid deal, and they can get in players and win games, and then it'll be year 7, 8, 9, and 10 where he gets the big money. But I could see what could happen is they restructure the contract halfway, like around year 7, and then he either makes more or less so that they can win games. But yeah, I think it helps both sides because he's locked up for 10 years. He gets a bunch of money, which, let's be honest, he's just set up his family for the next like 150
forever.
years. Really forever with a $500 million contract. But like he set up his family for the next while. And then honestly, the Chiefs are getting him at a reasonable price through the first 6 years of the deal. So smart move by both sides. Lock him up. Now they have the best quarterback in football for probably the next 10 years. I mean, who knows what could happen, but it looks like they have the best quarterback in football for at least the next decade.
And Zach, I want to point this out because there was another article that talked about, as I mentioned, Patrick Mahomes wants to build a Chiefs legacy. I mean, in only the last 2 or 3 years, they have done that. Obviously the Super Bowl last year and then even an AFC championship against a tough Patriots team 2 years ago. But there was a quote that he actually has, and it was talking about someone asked how many rings did he want to win. And he talked about, obviously he wants to chase greatness, and Brady's got 6. So he wants to do whatever he can to at least get to that number. And how the Chiefs played last year, especially in the Super Bowl against a tough 49ers defense, might I add. I mean, we knew, both you and I knew, the Chiefs offense versus the 49ers defense, that was the ideal matchup from the very beginning of the postseason for a Super Bowl. But he's trying to build that legacy, and so his goal seems like he wants to go after Tom Brady. Stay with the team a really long time, try to build as a powerhouse team, which I would argue they already are. To be honest, I already have them in Super Bowl sights already. But I mean, when I saw that quote, you can tell. I mean, he's wanting to do his best to start let people know that the Chiefs are a real powerhouse. So I really liked that quote and his confidence. He's only 24 years old and has the confidence of someone who's been playing the league for 10 years already. So I just can't wait for the development. I just hope that, because it's not that he's going to have a downfall in terms of his play style. I just hope there's, knock on wood, with no injury, because he's so much fun to watch in terms of how he controls his team. Andy Reid trusts him to make whatever is the right move and make any adjustments. So again, I'm excited for this football season just to see what Patrick Mahomes does. And as always, and probably for the next decade, it'll be interesting to see his growth and development.
What I'm excited for a few things. I'm excited for Patrick Mahomes football. I'm excited to see what happens next for the quarterback market. And another thing I've been seeing is the idea of a quarterback by committee to save some money on quarterbacks. I'm going to be honest, that I don't think that works. That does not work. Or it won't work because we haven't seen it yet. But some talk about the 49ers trading Jimmy Garoppolo and then drafting some sort of running quarterback and then going Nick Mullins in that running quarterback and running a quarterback by committee, so people aren't spending so much of their cap money on quarterbacks. But I don't think that will work. I mean, even the running back by committee, I guess the Ravens do it pretty well, but also the Ravens have probably the best running quarterback of all time, if not number 2. He's 1 or 2 already. I mean, the guy ran for 1,200 yards last year in Lamar Jackson. So I don't know if the Ravens are necessarily the best way to look at a running back by committee, but you look at all the other top teams with running backs, it's a workhorse running back. I mean, look at the Cowboys with Zeke, the Panthers with Christian McCaffrey, the Vikings with Dalvin Cook, Saquon Barkley and the Giants, Todd Gurley before with the Rams. I guess the 49ers also did a running back by committee and that worked. But for the most of the teams with the best running games, most of the time have a bell cow running back still in a lot of ways. And so it's hard to see a quarterback by committee thing working to try to kind of taper off this amount of money being spent on quarterbacks. That's something that could happen, but I don't think it works.
And as you said, he's changed the game, not obviously just on the field, as you said, and all different types of like how teams will structure around. As you said, Lamar Jackson is an offensive threat in just about every asset. As you said, I personally think that if Mahomes wasn't in the league or there's some universe where he wasn't there, Lamar Jackson, in my opinion, is probably, if not the best quarterback, at least the second best. But Mahomes, in my opinion, takes that spot. I think Lamar Jackson really kind of has proven people wrong, kind of lower in the draft than expect, or at least how you see his play style and how he performed now. You would think he's got to be like a first number 1 picker way up there. But again, as you said, it's just interesting. If that's why any chance when we got to see the Ravens and the Chiefs match up against each other, you knew it's a battle of 2 of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. But as you said, Mahomes has changed staying with Mahomes, changing so many different ways. And it will, like you said, it'll be fascinating to see if any teams will try to adjust their play style in terms of their salary caps on quarterbacks because of a deal like this.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to kind of see what happens moving forward. Well, we're going to step aside and be back, and we're going to talk about the MLB schedule when we return. This is Beyond the Stats.
Welcome back to Beyond the Stats. I'm Tanner Camp alongside the one, the only. Who else would I want to be with? It's Zachariah Begley himself. Zach, we've been waiting for it. Monday, the MLB officially released the schedule for this upcoming season, which will start in mid to later July, around July 23rd, 24th is when it's expected to start. Obviously, lots of people excited for baseball to come back. I know I am, and I'm sure you are as well. So what we've decided to do is we've both looked at the schedule. We've gotten a chance to look at some matchups throughout the whole season, and we are going to both have an idea, both give what we think are the five big matchups throughout the regular season. Zach, I'm going to give you the honors of starting first. Who do you think are your big matchups for this year?
All right, top five. I'm gonna start from 5 and go to 1.
Okay.
And yeah. So number 5, Yankees versus the Red Sox, because well, it's a rivalry. It's in my opinion, the second best rivalry in baseball, and you can't bet against the second best rivalry in baseball to not be on your list. I mean, that's just insane.
Understandable, absolutely.
Number 4, Braves versus Nats, and by Nats I mean Nationals, because Braves were the NL East regular season division champions, and then the Nationals obviously won the World Series. So a battle of the two best teams in the NL East is obviously where you go with it. Number 3, Cubs versus Cardinals, which I think is the best rivalry in baseball.
Yep, I was waiting, as a fellow Cubs fan, I was waiting for that one. I was like, if he puts Cubs, it's got to be Cardinals, but I was waiting to see.
Yeah, I thought about Cubs versus White Sox, but I went with Cubs and Cardinals because best rivalry in baseball. Can't go against that. Number 2, the Yankees versus the Rays, because the Yankees have the best lineup in baseball, in my opinion, and at least power lineup in baseball. And then the Rays have probably the best pitching staff from top to bottom in baseball. I mean, they have arguably 3 pitchers who could be number ones on another team's rotation, and then they have 3 insane players in the bullpen, and they can match up with anyone at any point in the game, and they have like all of their pitchers just have elite stuff, like one elite pitch. Like every pitcher has one elite pitch. So I have to go with that. And then I mean you have to look at Aaron Judge, Giancarlo Stanton, Gary Sanchez. I mean the list goes on and on and on. Who can hit on the in the lineup for the Yankees? And then number 1, it's Houston versus the Dodgers, but in parentheses, everyone. But it's I say the Dodgers because, I mean, obviously the Dodgers were the ones that lost the World Series to them in 2017, and then it turns out they cheated to win the World Series. And then, well, everyone, because let's be honest, everyone's coming for the Astros heads this year. I'm excited. The Astro series, every single one of them is going to be so good because everyone is going to try to beat them, and everyone's going to be coming for them as hard as against anyone in baseball. So I'm ready, but the Houston versus the Dodgers will be the big one because, well, I mean, the Dodgers got cheated out of a championship in 2017. So.
And Zach, you numbered yours, so I just kind of looked through, and because I think they're all obviously going to be important because normally with the regular format for baseball, 1 or 2 lost games can affect, but in that moment, at least early on, it's like, well, you got a lot of games, but 60 games, I think that's going to really spice things up because some of those games are going to mean a little more. So I kind of just decided to look at in terms of just, who they play, how many times they play, importance. So my first one that I looked at was Yankees Nationals. It's the first game of the new MLB season. I just like that matchup. You got Yankees, as you said, honestly, you can make an argument they already are in a good position to win the World Series. And then the Nationals obviously coming off their World Series championship. So I just think, they're only going to meet 3 times. The first, when they meet on opening day, they'll play 2 more times. And then that's it for this. So I think that's going to be an important matchup, at least in that moment, to kind of build some momentum, keep it going, see where both teams are at, and then just get the MLB started. So I say that's an important matchup. I also put the Cubs on, but I also put the Cubs and Brewers. And the reason that I decided on that was because I looked at the rankings or standings, and the Cubs and Brewers last year, I mean, goodness, they were just in their series last year when they played against each other. The Brewers actually beat the Cubs of the 19 times they played 10-9. So insanely close. But it's important to note that the Cubs went on a 5-game winning streak against the Brewers when they played against them. And the Cubs were just right there. They're only 5 games back from the Brewers in the NL Central. So I think that's an important matchup. I mean, of course, Cubs and Cardinals, but I think Cubs and Brewers, because they're just so close, and a lot of the games were usually really close. So I think that's going to be an important matchup to keep an eye on as we go throughout this season. I also put Boston and Tampa Bay. I think, after Boston a couple years ago, they were one of the best teams. Then they kind of had a really big drop off. I think that they're looking to try and bounce back. And of course, Tampa Bay, as you said, their pitching is unbelievable. And Boston is just right behind Tampa Bay. And by right behind, I mean, second and third, but a 12-game difference. But I think when Boston sees Tampa Bay on their schedule, they're going to circle that in red, knowing that those are going to be the important games. Because the Yankees, what are you going to do? They're going to be one of the strongest teams in the MLB, arguably the strongest. So Boston is going to have to make sure they make the most out of those games against the Rays. So I think that that's another super important matchup. Then I did put the Cardinals, and I mentioned the Brewers earlier, but Cardinals, Brewers, kind of the same reason for the Cubs and Brewers. Those are not only what I say are the two best teams in the NL Central, at least record-wise, but I think the Cardinals are looking to kind of bounce back. They beat the Braves last year in the postseason, and then of course lost to the Nationals, which shocked a lot of people. A lot of people were betting that it'd be the St. Louis Cardinals in the postseason. I mean, 4-3. No. Washington swept the Cardinals, and that was the part that I think shocked everybody, that the Nationals not only beat the Cardinals, they swept them. So I think that the Cardinals are going to look to really bounce back, and it's going to start with the Brewers so they can try to get back in that position to make a deep run into the playoffs. And this one's going to shock you, but so I had to put the Astros. Again, I was going to be like you, put Astros versus everyone because, of everything that's been happening with them the last year or two. This is going to be an interesting one. I'm putting the Astros and the Angels. The reason being...
Oh, yeah, that's good. That's a good matchup.
Mike Trout. I mean,
also,
what's to say?
New manager, Joe Madden. I mean, yeah, that's a good matchup.
Definitely. And I mean, you could also say Cubs, Angels if they were to play. But I like Astros, Angels. I guess what I really like about that is just I think the Angels, it's just so upset. They have the best player in baseball by far. I will say that. Not actually too sure if he's gonna play or not, though, because of this.
That's true. But yeah, he's probably the best player. It's not really that close.
But I just like that matchup between that. What's upsetting is you have a player like that, yet the Angels finished at 72 and 90, fourth in the AL West. The only team they were better than was Seattle. But I think that they're looking to really bounce back, and that kind of looks at that as you talked about the Astros. Everyone's going to look at Houston, and they are not just going to want to beat them. They are want to really beat them. So for the Angels, I would love to see Mike Trout in a postseason. So again, I don't know if that's like an eye popper, but I do think it's important for both those teams, the Astros, to try to find a way to win games and everything. But for the Angels, they're the same way. Again, all depending on with what happens with Mike Trout, and we'll hopefully find out soon with his decision. But those are my 5 important games. I kind of took a different approach than you did, but obviously with 60 games, every game will be a lot more important with how this new format is.
So, I say we didn't talk about this before, but I'm going to say let's do quick off the dome World Series predictions.
Okay.
So, my World Series prediction, it's Tampa Bay Rays, Los Angeles Dodgers in the World Series, and I think the Rays win 4-3.
Really? So I'm assuming you have the Rays. Do you have them playing New York, the Yankees, or do you have them playing someone else?
So I don't know if they'll meet the Yankees in the ALCS, but I in the postseason I pick pitching over hitting, like basically every time.
That's true.
So, and the Rays have the best top to bottom pitching staff in baseball, both starting rotation and bullpen. So I have to go with the Rays winning the World Series 4-3, and I think they beat the Dodgers. I don't see a way of the Nationals winning again after they lost Rendon. I mean, they still have Scherzer and they still have Steven Strasburg, but they're going to miss Rendon, I think, enough that I think the Dodgers find a way to pull it off, especially since they just got Mookie Betts. And yeah.
So yeah, no, kind of thinking through and at least looking back. So I'm actually the pitching, as you said, is going to be really important, and that's where regular season is going to be important to see how the Yankees match up against that pitching staff. But it's also different time, postseason. Every game truly does matter even more because that one loss or that one win could be the difference between you going to play for a World Series or you going home and in the season. So I'm gonna, I'm looking through here again. Oh, I could be that guy and say that the Astros are going back to the World Series, but I won't be. I'm actually going to put the Yankees. I think that their offense is just so strong that it's good. I do think it'll go to 7, though. I think that's one. If New York and Tampa Bay can meet in the ALCS, I think it's going to be close. It's not going to be a blowout, kind of like with, again, the surprising Nationals beating the Cardinals. Again, not just beating them, but sweeping them. So I think the Yankees will come out of the AL. Then for the NL, I don't want to say the Dodgers because everyone will, but I don't see how you couldn't. I mean, the Dodgers are just so strong. So I think it's going to be the Dodgers and the Yankees. And then depending on how it goes there, same. I think it's going to go to 7. I'm going to give love to the NL. I think the Dodgers will. I think part of it is just they have been waiting. I mean, they've been so close so many times the last couple of years.
Right. They've gone like over the last 4 years. I think they've gone like 2 or 3 times and haven't won once.
And it's just been so close. Like one pitch,
Right.
one swing of the bat. Like it just feels like they just can't. Honestly, stretch, call me weird or anything, but it reminds me of the Houston Rockets in the playoffs. There was a stretch where they could only get to the Western Conference Finals, and who would stop them? The Golden State Warriors. Or it reminds me of that for basketball. They're just a team that cannot seem to get into those bigger moments like the World Series or finish off in the NLCS. So I'm going with Dodgers and Yankees, and I think I'm going to go Dodgers in 7. But again, most importantly, I'm excited for baseball, and I know you are for sure.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Well, that's all that we've got for the MLB. When we come back, we're going to look at a big shakeup that was coming to college sports. Once again, I'm Tanner Camp with Zachariah Begley, and this is Beyond the Stats.
Tanner, joining me, I'm Zachariah Begley. We're talking about college sports and what some of the changes happening in the Ivy League, the Big 10, the Pac-12, the ACC coming up in the near future, and of course, what the commissioner of the SEC said today, and what that kind of means for college sports, but in this case, particularly college football moving forward. Tanner, what are your sort of initial thoughts about it?
So, Zach, again, before we get started in terms for all sports, I remember when we were doing our first episode and we found out the news that March Madness wasn't happening for both men's and the women's basketball. And then pretty much all sports from there were starting to slowly get canceled. So at least for the Ivy League, I feel super sorry for those athletes who will not get the chance to compete again on particular, football and other major sports. So,
Right.
But sticking with college football, talk about the in-game or in-conference, it makes sense. All conferences will have a couple schools that, kind of out there, like for Big Ten. First, you got your close teams like Indiana, Purdue, Michigan State, and Illinois, Northwestern, like super close. Then you do have those, what we kind of would call stragglers, and, Rutgers and Maryland, out in the New Jersey, then Maryland area, then Iowa, Nebraska. So, you will, but again, it just still makes sense. Like, there's no need for like Michigan State to go to like a USC because, again, it's still important because those help, build your team's strength and help them prove if you're a really good team. But just for this case, it just doesn't make sense for that. You might as well play teams that are within your respected conference and just prove, who is the best and then figure out where to go from here. So I like the move. But Zach, I know we both had talked. There was one team in particular that at least we both thought of that is going to kind of be in a weird position with this.
Right. Notre Dame. Yeah. I'm wondering what's going to happen with Notre Dame this upcoming season because they're not in a conference. And maybe they join a conference for 1 year. I mean, I don't know how they pull that off, but I think this proves that you need to be in a conference at this point. And I think Notre Dame, well, at least Notre Dame has to join a conference. I think they need to join a conference. They will probably join the ACC because they're the ACC for basketball, but they should join the Big Ten.
Yep, I was just about to say that.
They should join the Big Ten, but they'll join the ACC.
It just makes sense for them. I mean, they're already right there with like Purdue's and Indy.
Yeah.
But they are ACC because obviously basketball, for college basketball, both men's and women's, is why. But like you said, I could see them joining that. But again, we'll see. We'll even see depending on their school.
Actually, thinking about it, they're in the Big Ten for hockey. So
correct.
So they could join the Big Ten, and they should join the Big Ten, because it's closer and it makes more sense. And they should move their basketball to the Big Ten also, because that makes more sense. But they won't. Also, the Big Ten is a better basketball conference than the ACC. So, yeah.
I'll be one to say that also. But Zach, I think the other thing that's important with this is that, we've seen the Ivy League, their fall sports done.
Right, they're just done.
No, but now the question is, because, we want to see college football and fans will be devastated if they don't get it. But I think through this again, the in-conference is, if they want to play, is by far the safest way, like of all the options, unless they would just do in-state stuff. But I don't think that's going to do, I think in-conference at this point is the only feasible way to make it work.
Right, because if you do in-state stuff, does Purdue play Indiana 20 times or like 12 times?
Exactly.
Like how do you? I don't know.
Indiana State. I mean, like you've got.
Oh yeah, play Indiana State.
But no, because then it's either that or they'll just have to just stop, or not just college football. Again, we're focusing on it, but college sports or fall sports in general. So my hope is that at least that this can work, because people will still be fine as long as, in my opinion, I'd love the conference games. Anyway, SEC will give each other good games, Pac-12,
right.
Obviously, ACC, and of course Big Ten. But I hope it works. But again, it all just depends on where this pandemic comes or goes from here. We've seen it, it was up, it was going down a little bit, and we've seen, unfortunately, it spike up. So I just hope that we can, but I won't be terribly upset if it doesn't happen, because they're trying to keep everyone safe. We earlier in previous episodes, we've talked about, California, most schools are going to just go straight to online for the fall. So it really just depends on where we go from here. I hope it gets better. I'm praying for that, but we'll just have to wait and see. But at least focusing on college football, and right now with the in-conference stuff, it's the best and smartest move as of right now.
Yeah, it's gonna be hard to see how they can do beyond in-conference. Up until the playoffs, I think they can do They could probably do a 14 playoff and then just not do the bowl games. That's probably the only way they can pull that off, which would be unfortunate because there's a lot of great bowls like the Rose Bowl, the Sugar Bowl, the Orange Bowl, even the GoDaddy.com Bowl. That's mostly a joke, but still. But yeah, it'll be. I think they play in conference games, and then I don't know how they pick the top 4 teams, unless literally only 4 teams go undefeated. But I think they have to do it that way, and then they just play the 4-team playoff and then crown a champion, and call it what it is.
It'll be interesting to see. That's definitely for sure. We'll obviously keep you updated with everything. But biggest thing, let's just hope we get some college football. We'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, here's to hoping we get college football this upcoming fall. that's all we have for you today. Check us out on social media: Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. We're at Beyond the Stats. We are doing some revamping of social media, so you can see some new stuff coming in the coming days and weeks. Obviously, we're on most major podcasting sites at Beyond the Stats, and then, of course, on YouTube at Beyond the Stats as well. Leave us some feedback, comment, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell on YouTube. So you don't miss any content.
Well, until next time, once again, I'm Tanner Camp, Zachariah Begley, and this has been Beyond the Stats.